Good morning. My name is Bob Lindahl, and I will be your service leader today. I'd like to welcome you to the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Door County. As Unitarian Universalists, we come together each week bound not by a creed or a mutual desire to please one God or many gods or any God. Yet we're drawn together by a belief that how we are in this world matters. So we have a tradition of asking visitors and those who are returning to us after being gone for a while if they would stand and introduce themselves. So if you fit into one of those categories, would you please stand up, and we'll wait we'll not bring a microphone around to you while you're introducing yourselves, but we will once we get into the regular announcements. So, yes.
Kitty Wrigley from the Unitarian Universalist Congregation in Springfield, Illinois.
Oh, well, welcome.
And I'm Larry Muir from the same place.
Okay, thank you. Nice to have you with us. Yes.
I'm Steve Fry, and this is my wife Sarah, and we are from UUCW in Brookfield, Wisconsin.
Brookfield, well, welcome.
My name is Darren Mackey. I've traveled all the way from Bailey's Harbor to be here today.
Mm-hmm. Welcome.
And I'm his wife Judy. We're neighbors of the good.
All right.
And I'm Ann DePrey, also a neighbor and fellow friend and famous person with the goods as well.
Good.
And I'm Jay Frederick, and I'm the Von Chaplain with the goods as well.
Well, good. We'll see what we can teach you about Terry Good today. Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else like to introduce themselves this morning? Yes.
Yeah, I'm Karen Gilsonby. I have been here for a long, long, long time. I just wanted to thank people who sent their good wishes to me last year for my health problem.
Okay.
But anyway, I'm in the mission, so.
Okay. Welcome, Karen. So if anyone has any other announcements, please raise your hand, and my wife Wilma will bring the microphone around to you.
Good morning, Jane Wise. I didn't get an article in the E-Blast this week, sorry about that. But Thursday, there was no cereal, no tuna, no snacks, very little canned fruit. The salmon is finally going out of the freezer, so we'll be buying frozen vegetables and butter to put in there for all the macaroni and cheese that is offered through the pantry. Lots of it. Don't buy macaroni and cheese. And please don't buy beans. There are a lot of beans, or bring beans. But I'll let you know if we run out of those. And spaghetti sauce, we could use some spaghetti sauce. So thanks very much.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, I'm Jamie Hanratty, a member of this fellowship. I have two quick announcements. Again, welcome to everybody in YouTube land, especially to David Taylor. And I have to tell you something about David Taylor. He is the son of Helen Taylor, who is founder of this fellowship. And he used to help, when they had to move his mom down to Beaumont, Texas, he used to help his mom call me every week. And now, since his mom has passed, he calls me every week. And I just want to thank him profusely for that. It means a lot to me and a lot to this congregation, really, that I can tell you all that, right? And so the other announcement I'd like to make is please, please, please think about attending the concert at the Crest this evening. With Kate Boyd is going to be playing with the Griffin Quartet. It starts at 5 o'clock. And if any of you would like to have a spontaneous circle gathering with us at Villaggio's for dinner afterwards, my husband and I have reservations. If you're thinking about going out to dinner after the concert, please see me at the break.
Okay. Anyone else? Hank?
Yeah, hi. I'm Buttons Wolst. I'm not really, but today I'm playing that role to bring a heightened
You're
level
not doing
of
a very good job of it, yeah. Okay.
to bring a higher level of authenticity to this announcement.
And it's to remind you once again that there's a pop-up art show at the Bailey's Harbor Town Hall next week, Saturday, October 11th, from 10 to 5, and Sunday, October 12th, 10 to 3. And Buttons, it'll feature Buttons artwork, my artwork, remember, Buttons. So it'll feature my artwork, and all of it's deeply discounted, also handmade cards. And the plus for you is you get a wonderful piece of artwork. The plus for the Door County Housing Partnership is they receive all the proceeds, 100% of the proceeds. So it's one thing that we think we can do to help that organization, which seeks to bring housing to people like teachers and firefighters and policemen and garbage collectors for whom housing values in Door County have become a little bit more exorbitant, that they can no longer afford it. And so they just moved in a gentleman who works for Going Garbage into their third house, I think, up in Sister Bay. And it's a wonderful organization. You can get some wonderful art next week, Buttons Woolst.
Thank you. Anybody else? I've just got one that I would like to give you here also, that we'll be having our semi-annual highway pickup this coming Wednesday, the 8th, starting at 9 o'clock up at Kick Ash Coffee up in Ellison Bay. So we clean about 2 miles worth of road north of Ellison Bay. That sounds like a lot, but if we have 8 people, we're done before 11 o'clock in the morning. So if you can do that, there's a sign-up sheet out in on the counter in the lobby, and we'd appreciate knowing ahead of time if we're coming. We've already got 4 people, so we just need 4 more. So thank you for considering that.
Bob?
Yes.
May I answer my announcement? I don't think I need to.
Yes.
I put a poster up on the bulletin board with all the details about the art pop-up, and so you can shoot a picture of it if you didn't jot down what I just shared with you. And there's also an ad in the Peninsula Pulse this week. So the specifics are in several places, as well as posters around the county.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Just a couple of other items before we start our service today. Please remember to silence your phones and other devices if you haven't already done that. If you're ever having difficulty hearing during the service today, just raise your hand and we'll see that the sound gets adjusted for you. Then following today's service, please join us for refreshments and time together to visit in the gathering room, which is right through the lobby. Some pretty good stuff out there today, so you need to join us. And after about 15 minutes, we'll ring the chimes, and that's for those of you who would like to come to our talk back. We'll meet over on this side of the fellowship with Terry to talk about his message today. I remember for me, when I first started coming to this fellowship, I thought, wow, these people even want to stay after church to talk after the speaker. And so that's a tradition that we have here that's always an inspirational and a good time and a fun time to get together and reflect more on what the message we heard. So we welcome Terry Good as our speaker today. This is always the fun part for me. Okay. But Terry is no stranger to our fellowship, and among his other interests, teaching philosophy seems to be a recurring passion. In addition to teaching at the university level, you'll find Terry practicing his craft up here annually at the Clearing winter classes and Bjorklund in the summer, and then once a year here at the fellowship. So it's been my privilege for a few years now to be his service leader each time he does this. So we just thank Pam and Terry both for the many ways that they make this place work during the course of the year. Now, we know most of those things that I just mentioned. So I asked Terry for a couple of facts that we didn't know. One is that he's been corresponding about philosophy with a Wisconsin prison inmate for the last 7 years. He just finished editing a 500-page book for a former colleague and has also written the foreword for the book. The title of the book, which Wilma has requested for her reading before bed, is challenges posed by critical rationalist criticisms of a critical rationalist theories. Now, I'm going to say that one more time because you're going to need to go to Amazon today to check it out. Challenges posed by critical rationalist criticisms of critical rationalist theories. And that will give us an idea of the depth of that we're, that's, Terry will bring that type of thing all to light for us, and he does. Terry also claims he can still kick a 30-yard field goal. What? So, now before we start the service, I got to thinking that in my Protestant background, this was always the point of the service where we would ask for forgiveness and confess our sins. And so it got me to thinking that I want to enter the rest of the service with a clean heart, okay? So this morning I want to publicly relieve myself of guilt I've been carrying for the last 6 months. You see, I went out for dinner with Pam and Terry about 6 months ago, and to no one's surprise, I had forgotten my wallet. And Wilmo can identify with that too. So they graciously agreed to cover my dinner if I would reimburse them for their $20 tip. I said, sure. I got to admit, I haven't done so yet. So Terry, I'm here to come clean with you in front of all of these witnesses, and I want to express my sincere goodwill by paying my debt to you at this time. But the unfortunate thing is I had to stop on the way to the pig this morning, and so I'm going to give you $1.52, and I promise I'll get the rest of you to you by next year. Okay? I'll be sure it finds its way to the offering plate. Yeah, okay. So, okay, it's time now to pause and light our chalice. I've asked Tom Schroeder if he would come up and light the chalice for us today. Spirit of life, bring us beauty. Spirit of life, bring us strength. Spirit of life, bring us empathy. Spirit of life, bring us knowledge and wisdom. And Spirit of life, bring us the gift of giving and of receiving love. So we will move on with that thought and look at hymn number 123, Spirit of Life. Please rise and remain through the doxology and unison affirmation. Spirit of life, come unto me. Sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion. Blow in the wind, rise in the sea, spill in the land, giving life the shape of justice. Roots won't make low, wings set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me. We gather together to seek knowledge and wisdom, to explore freely the vast reaches of mind and spirit, to celebrate within the caring community those truths, ancient and modern, which give meaning and direction to our lives. sky. Let songs of hope and faith arise. Let peace, goodwill, on earth be sung. In every land, by every tongue. Thank you. You may be seated. So the importance of this part of the service is a chance to build and cement our community together as we learn each other's joys from our daily life and concerns that are holding us down. So anyone, if you raise your hand, if you would like to share in that way, Wilma will bring the microphone to you. Anybody have a joy or concern? Carol?
Hi, I'm Carol Soper. Just a thought for our son who works for the National Park Service in Philadelphia at the facility where the Liberty Bell is,
Wow.
which is closed. As of Wednesday, he still had a job. Who knows? So please keep him in your thoughts.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
I'm Meg Siegelman, and this is Under Joys. For those of you who remember Karen Cruz, once a member before she moved out to Massachusetts to help care for her grandchildren, she just completed a 95-mile walk on the Santiago Camilla Trail in Spain and Portugal at the age of 85.
Wow.
Wow is right. I hope she's watching. I told her to.
Nancy Raffel. I just want to say a big thank you to the caring committee. I had light bulbs that I would have to have climbed a ladder to get to, and they helped me get those bulbs changed. Also, give a good thought to my sister, my baby sister. She's having gallbladder surgery in a couple of weeks. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, Trish Black from the Caring Committee, speaking on behalf of Jerry Friedberg, who many of you know. I'm going to say maybe it's been 4 weeks. She fell, assumed she had a sprain, took her a while to go to seek medical attention. She, in fact, had a fracture. I think she's, to coin a phrase from my previous life, kind of shack-wacky. So she's not interested particularly in visitors. It's hard for her to get around, but she would welcome phone calls. I'll also give just a brief update on Judy as of today. She's having a good day, and she's thankful for every day. That's a good day.
Good. Anyone else? Okay. Thank you. So now it's time for our offertory. We encourage you to give generously toward the work of the fellowship, both here and around the world as we participate with the UUFDC, or with the Unitarian Universalist Church. So, thank you. So we begin our moment of quiet this morning with these thoughts. What does it mean to gain knowledge and wisdom from our mistakes? Blessed are they who fall in the mud, who jump with gusto and rip their pants, who skin with the skin elbows and bruise the ego, for they shall know the sweetness of risk. Blessed are they who make great mistakes, whose intentions are good but actions have injured, who know the hot sense of regret, then ask for mercy, for their hearts will know the gift of forgiveness. Blessed are those who have sometimes felt less than, for they know the wisdom of the imperfect. Blessed are they who refuse to listen to the naysayers, for their hearts will be houses of hope. Blessed are they who see beyond the surface of another, for they shall be able to delight in the gift of compassion. And blessed are they who go wildly and boldly with abandon, for they shall know the path of justice. So before our message today, just these words from Henry David Thoreau about philosophers. There are nowadays professors of philosophy, but not philosophers. Yet it is admirable to profess because it was once admirable to live. To be a philosopher is not merely to have subtle thoughts, nor even to found a school, but so to love wisdom as to live according to its dictates. A life of simplicity, independence, magnanimity, and trust. It is to solve some of the problems of life, not only theoretically, but practically. And now, my dear friend, Terry Good.
Morning. Thank you to the fellowship for having me today. It is always an honor and a privilege to speak here. I know, I say that every time. But hey, if I say something more than once, maybe it's true. Thank you, Brother Bob, for your longtime commitment to the fellowship. You've served it admirably in many ways over many years. And thank you for being my service leader once again. I think it's the fourth, maybe the fifth time. One could not ask for a better friend, and I know because I've asked. I'm gonna get you. I know you had a birthday this week, bro. There's a little something for you in the right-hand drawer over here. I thought it best not to put it on the chalice table. You can pick it up later. Thank you, Jason, for your artistry. Your selection of music is always apropos, and your performance always masterful. The fellowship is grateful to have you among its cadre of musicians. You'll need to tell me when your birthday is. I have a short quote to start, one you've likely heard before, but one worth hearing again, and I quote, "Reports that say that something hasn't happened are always interesting to me, because as we know, there are known knowns. There are things we know we know. We also know there are known unknowns. That is to say, we know there are some things we do not know. but there are also unknown unknowns, the ones we don't know we don't know. You perhaps recognize those words from that famous philosopher Donald Rumsfeld. But here is something you probably don't know about him. I note this just so that you are guaranteed at least some knowledge this morning. Rumsfeld was and still is the youngest Secretary of Defense of the United States, serving under President Gerald Ford. He is also the oldest person to serve as Secretary of Defense under President George W. Bush. What goes around comes around. That's your first piece of wisdom for today. Today, my aim is to enlighten you about the wisdom of Donald Rumsfeld with a message about what we know and how we know it. My message continues or begins by continuing the UUFCDC tradition of talking about one of the 7 principles on the first Sunday of the month, a tradition we must continue. Today it is the 4th principle, the search for truth and meaning, because that search is directly and importantly related to knowing. Actually, my message incorporates talking about both the 4th principle and the unison affirmation. Because of that, Jim Black, our esteemed chair of the program committee, has given me special dispensation to go beyond the 20-minute maximum limit for a UU Sunday message, but only by 3 minutes before he brings out the hook. So I need to get started. As you know, the unison affirmation says, we gather together to seek knowledge and wisdom, to explore freely the vast reaches of mind and spirit, to celebrate within a caring community those truths, ancient and modern, that give meaning and direction to our lives. This absolutely brilliant statement comes not from the Unitarian Universalist Association, as you might think, but from the Reverend Robert Clark, one of the founders of the UUFDC. It is profound. It is, in effect, the covenant for the 4th Unitarian principle, the free and responsible search for truth and meaning. Let me read that affirmation once again, but this time from the very first order of service of the UUFDC on February 23rd of 1997. I thank my friend Helene DiUlio for giving me a precious copy of it. It is the first written record of the unison affirmation, then known as a statement of purpose. I read it from that order of service because it contains the greatest typo in the history of Unitarianism. Well, okay, at least in the history of the UUFDC. A written Freudian slip that reveals the true purpose of Unitarianism. And I quote, a statement of purpose: to seek knowledge and wisdom, to explore freely the vast reaches of mind and spirit, and to celebrate within the caring community those truths, ancient and modern, which give meaning and direction to our lives. Now, does that capture Unitarianism or not? Okay, down to serious business about the 4th principle and the unison affirmation. We need to ask, what's going on in both, and how does it relate to knowing and today's message? First, both dictums require that the search for knowledge be free. History is replete with examples where those searches have been subverted, almost always by political coercion. This is why we in America cherish and have enshrined freedom of expression and freedom of the press, but which also allows true social and seats at the table, places where those very freedoms are under serious attack. How ironic. Second, the 4th principle explicitly and the unison affirmation implicitly require that the search for truth and knowledge be responsible. If the search does not meet standards of good reason, including decorum and common civility, it is irresponsible. We are reminded of this failure in almost all current political discourse, particularly in the remarks of our president. He has a long way to go to exhibit what President Lincoln called the better angels of our nature, if he would even understand what Lincoln meant. Third, the unison affirmation also invites us to seek wisdom. The affirmation makes the important distinction between knowledge and wisdom, one we should all keep in mind. You, of course, all know the difference. As British journalist and humorist Miles Kingdon puts it, knowledge is knowing that the tomato is a fruit. Wisdom is not putting them in a fruit salad. Okay, now to the philosophical business of the day. And where's Jim? My 20 minutes starts now. I suspect your answer to the question of the title of today's message, what do you know, is the same that Michael Feldman's audiences offered when the famous National Public Radio star asked the question every Saturday morning. The audience always responded, not much, you? I also answer, I don't know much either. But I do know about the philosophical theories behind our claims to know. I have spent over 60 years studying them. Okay, some of us are slow learners. It is those philosophical theories that I will now address. Philosophers have been concerned about knowledge, truth, and wisdom for millennia. The word philosophy, Greek in origin, means love of wisdom, from philo, for love of, and sophia, for wisdom. One of the 5 fundamental questions of philosophy asks, what is knowledge? It, along with its companion, what is truth, carve out the space that philosophers call epistemology, the theory of knowledge, one half of the domain known as metaphysics. The ancient Greeks talked a lot about knowledge, wisdom, and the search for truth. They even had a process for it, the Socratic dialectic, question, answer, criticism. The Socratic dialectic, while simple in presentation, is absolutely powerful in substance. It meets the highest standards of reason. It is self-reflexive. To question it is to practice it. You cannot escape it, even if you are Unitarian. Questioning and criticizing are at the heart of the search for truth and knowledge. Write that one down as another piece of wisdom for today. Socrates, who was responsible for the dialectic, was the teacher of Plato, his most famous student. And Plato illustrated the dialectic in all of his writings. 3 of those are of interest to us today because they directly address the concept of knowledge, truth, and wisdom. The first, from the Republic, contains a famous allegory about wisdom. The second, from the Meno, is a story about how we know. And the third, from the Theaetetus, introduces the first formal epistemology in the Western tradition, the Platonic conception of knowledge. Let's briefly look at each, beginning with the allegory. The allegory of the cave in the Republic is a story about getting from wonder to wisdom, being led from darkness to light, from ignorance to knowledge. Here, in short, is the story. Imagine everyone, including all of us here in the UU, are in a cave facing a wall. The only light in the cave comes from a fire behind us, like being here in the sanctuary, but with the fireplace behind us. If the fire within was behind us and we could not turn around, the only thing we would see would be the shadows on the wall in front of us. That would be our reality, our understanding of the world, but we would be mistaken. It would not be what is real. It would not reflect the truth. It would not give us knowledge and wisdom. Plato argued that those in the cave needed to be turned around, led to the source of light, to escape their ignorance. And this could only be accomplished by who else? Philosophers, who would then lead the way. Philosopher kings, as Plato called them. We need leaders who understand the search for truth and its importance, and who will keep coming back to rescue those still in the cave, mostly the Unitarians. The search for knowledge, truth, and wisdom begins in ignorance, and that ignorance is overcome by coming to see the light through the world of midwives who are capable of drawing us out. The graphic and analogy are real. Think about it. This is the aim of education. It's what teachers do. and why teaching is the most important profession there is, despite the fact what George Bernard Shaw said in 1905 in Man and Superman, that those who can do and those who can't teach. Of Shaw I ask, and who taught you that? I turn then to the Meno. It is a more direct embodiment of the Socratic dialectic. The dialogue begins with the question, can virtue be taught? Socrates thinks the answer is yes, and he proceeds to offer a proof. In the dialogue, Socrates takes an uneducated slave boy off the streets of Athens, and he teaches him a geometrical theorem simply by asking him questions and by correcting his mistakes when he answers, until the slave boy proves the theorem in question on his own. This alone would have been a beautiful and powerful story to illustrate the Socratic dialectic. But Plato drew an entirely and totally different conclusion, claiming that the story demonstrated that knowledge is just recollection, that we are born knowing everything we will ever know. And thus, of course, virtue can be taught because we already know how to be virtuous. How convenient. Now, we all know that we are not born knowing everything we're ever going to know. And life is not simply a matter of recalling it, albeit life would be so much easier if it were, but not very interesting. But despite it being false that we are born with complete foreknowledge, we are all smarter than we think. We just need coaching. We need the midwives. We need the teachers. We need the people who will lead us from darkness to light. People who will teach us how to learn and the importance of learning. This is the true import of the Meno, which was actually a prelude to the allegory of the cave. I turn then to the Theaetetus, to the formal theory of knowledge and today's formal philosophy lesson. The Theaetetus presents Plato's mature and most informed epistemology. It is perhaps his most famous dialogue, well, outside of the Apology, which recounts the death or trial and death of Socrates. In the Theaetetus, we get the Platonic conception of knowledge, the epistemological theory that has been center stage for 2,500 years in Western thought. And we get the answer to the question, what is knowledge? To wit, knowledge is justified true belief. This 5-word theory, in answer to the question, has accounted for more scholarly work in the last 2,500 years than any other philosophical theory or problem. Well, maybe the question of God has had as much written about it, but it is essentially a question about knowing as well. How can we know if God exists? By the way, the answer to the God question is we still don't know. Philosophy is a lot of fun. We do not have time today for a detailed assessment of a Platonic conception of knowledge. I know that comes as a terrible disappointment, but we do have time to look at how philosophers adopted the justificationist approach that it embodies and what it has wrought. To start, it is important to note some things about the belief and truth elements of the Platonic theory, the things that we will not be addressing in detail. First, that knowledge is not belief alone. That is, just because you believe something, you don't know it. Many, including our current president, seem to have missed this basic lesson, particularly concerning who won the 2020 election. It is also the case that just because something is true doesn't mean that it is known. In fact, there are and will forever be things that are true but not known, or perhaps cannot be known. Donald Rumsfeld was actually onto something very important there. Maybe there are even things that are impossible to know. If I had an example, I would provide it, but then it would be known. The point is, knowledge is not only more than belief alone, but also more than true belief. True belief is just correct opinion. It only becomes knowledge when justified, at least according to Plato. I turn then to that cornerstone concept of Plato's epistemology, that of justification, the criterion that creates all the problems. Philosophers, theologians, scientists, everybody jumped on the justificationist bandwagon with theories about what it means. Some suggesting that we should resurrect Plato's earlier idea that we are born knowing everything we'll ever know because we have innate ideas, i.e. things that we're born knowing, and that they are used to justify our beliefs. Descartes was one of the most famous to do so in the 17th century. He tried deducing all knowledge from first principles based upon innate ideas. The effort failed, of course. However, Descartes did carve out an important kind of knowledge based upon belief alone, what he called knowledge that is certain and indubitable. Thus the famous cogito propositions, I think and I exist. That is, I am a thing that thinks, and I cannot be mistaken about it if I believe it, because the act of believing it is an act of thinking. There are, in fact, some things that we do know just in virtue of their being believed. But, and it's a big but, those propositions do not apply to beliefs about the material world, thus the famous mind-body problem in the Western philosophy. The appeal to innate ideas was softened in the 18th century by a retreat to the concept of intuition as justification for knowledge, kind of a watered-down TikTok version of innate ideas. We just intuit things. This was a complete lowering of standards and, quite frankly, a complete failure. Who then decides among competing intuitions, and how? By appeal to yet other intuitions, and if so, whose? Intuition was a dead end and should never have been injected into serious philosophical debate about the basis of knowledge. However, the forerunner of intuition, that is, innate ideas, stuck around and held court in philosophy for many years and in important new ways. Even if we are not born knowing everything, maybe we are born with the capability of knowing something. And if this is true, it needs to be explained. Enter Immanuel Kant, the famous 18th century philosopher. Now, not to worry, we're not going to examine all 13 of his books this morning. Just suffice it to say, Kant argued that we are born with the capability to know things and that we construct what we know using that capability. We do this through the application of what Kant called the categories of the understanding that are necessary to understand reality. Thus, the world is as we conceive it, not as we perceive it, perception itself being molded by the categories of the understanding. And luckily, there is a one-to-one correspondence between how we conceive of the world and the way the world actually is, because of the transcendental unity of apperception, a concept that is, I'm sure, familiar to all Unitarians. What to make of this? Kant posed serious new problems. How is knowledge possible, and how does what we think match up with reality? And Kant almost pulled it off through what he called a transcendental deduction. I love Kant. He was brilliant, but mostly because he was mistaken. He showed us the way with important new problems and solutions, both of which are part of the key to gaining knowledge and getting us closer to the truth. But he was progressive because he was mistaken. I think that underlying dictum that progress is made because of mistakes qualifies as another piece of wisdom for today, perhaps the most important one. But we need to go deeper into the notion of justification, because it has been and still is so widely endorsed by scientists, mathematicians, theologians, you name it, each offering different kinds of justification. So what kind of justification is needed to guarantee knowledge? Logical proof, empirical evidence, the word of authority, whatever. I argue that justification of any kind will not work. High-end justification, i.e. proof, cannot be attained because the process cannot be proven. Medium-strength justification, i.e. knowledge based upon evidence, doesn't work either because the same evidence supports incompatible hypotheses. Thus, collecting evidence actually works against the idea that it's important to justifying what we believe. And the appeal to authority simply sidesteps the problem, because no authority can be corrected except by appeal to yet another authority. There is no independent means for correction, and if there were, it would obviate the need for the authority. If justification means proof, we need to prove the basis of our proofs. This leads to what philosophers call an infinite regress. That's a bad thing. If justification means amassing evidence, then we can show that logically equivalent hypotheses are not supported by the same evidence. That's called Hempel's paradox. Worse, we can show that incompatible hypotheses are supported by the same evidence. That's called Goodman's paradox. We do not have time today to explicate those paradoxes, but they make clear that proof and evidence are not the foundation of knowledge. And if justification requires authority, we have no rational means to uncover mistakes without rejecting that authority. So where do we go from here? I suggest that we've been on the wrong track, barking up the wrong tree. We've been asking the wrong question, looking for the essence of knowledge when there is none. Enter a new problem. Ask not what is knowledge, but how do we learn? And equally important, how can we progress even when we make mistakes? These are serious epistemological questions that need answers, and they take us in an entirely different direction. They are at the forefront of current epistemology. I have argued elsewhere, even in print, that our best theories come from our best mistakes, that bad reason is often better than good reason because it uncovers new and deeper problems, new and bolder answers, and opens a door to deeper criticism. I cannot develop these ideas today, but I remind you that there are clearing classes and Bjorklund seminars, and they are, just like everything in Mexico, almost free. You cannot pay too much to learn. That is another important piece of wisdom for today. I turn finally to a question that raises even more doubts about traditional justification epistemology. To wit, how then do we learn from literature, i.e. from fiction? We know by definition that it's not true. The preponderance of sentences in every novel are knowingly false. That's why it's called fiction. But novels contain knowledge, even wisdom. So how is that to be explained? It requires new standards of knowing, but truth, belief, and justification, the pillars of the Platonic epistemology, cannot be among them. Learning from fiction poses a serious challenge to traditional epistemology. I offer historical fiction as an important example. We have no objective way to distinguish historical fiction from what is called factual history. What's worse, the former is often better history than the latter. Go read Michael Dobbs, his historical fiction about World War II, particularly about Winston Churchill, and his motivations and innermost thoughts is better than any factual history. How can this be? Only a philosopher would stay awake at night worrying about it. So one final but important thought about where this leads us. Might seeking knowledge and truth then be just values, something to be esteemed but not explained by traditional epistemology? Something necessary in order to make sense of the world, in order to find meaning and direction in our lives as Unitarians proclaim, but not something in the realm of what was traditionally called knowledge? Something that requires a commitment to norms, institutional standards and practices, but something not sourced in justification. In other words, might seeking knowledge and truth be a matter of ethics, what we should believe as opposed to what is true or justified to believe? I don't know. There's a lot to be sorted out there, but I do know that we must try to find out in our continuing search for knowledge, truth, and wisdom. Thank you again for having me today. Thank you for your patience and attention to detail, particularly given the complexity of the subject. I look forward to the talk back and your always penetrating questions. And P.S. Jim Black, that was exactly 17 and a half minutes.
Thank you, Terry. We look forward to next year. And Jason, thank you for all of your help in today's service. We always enjoy having you with us. So in extinguishing our chalice, excuse me, I jumped ahead. Hymn number 345. Let's please rise and stand if you're able, and Thank you. You may be seated. Thank you, Sarah. So, we're going to extinguish our chalice today by reading these words. And now may we go forth in the certainty of our faith, in the knowledge of love, and in the vision of hope. And in our going, may we be blessed with all of the good things on this day and in the days to come.